Coach, good to talk to you again. How are you?
You too, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Just trying to sort out all this stuff with the New England Patriots here. Do you have any experiences to reflect on or tell us about that will give us an idea of what's gone on in New England, and is it prevalent or has it been going on elsewhere?
Well, to be honest with you, when you go way back to 2000 when they first started investigating all these different things, being a head coach, you were a part of it. You can't go through a lot of detail, but they spent a lot of time talking over it and making decisions, just like they have over the Deflategate. They've at least investigated it, and they come up with a plan, and you don't always agree with the plan, but at least they've given it some time.
All right, explain this to me. Did you have somebody who was a lip reader on your staff during games?
Well, I'll be honest with you, back then, everybody was trying to steal signals.
Yeah.
You take, 10, 15 teams, and I can tell you some of the best quarterbacks in the league, they had different cue cards from the sideline, depending on what defense or blitz, and tried to do everything they could. And, of course, now they went to investigating about relative, did they video, was that in the best interest of the game, and things along those lines. So, they looked at that for a lot of years, and they came up with obviously a final verdict. And when I look at those things, I look at them as a pass, because I can go back and tell you 100 different stories, and I don't think we need to reflect back then.
But what would you gain out of lip reading?
Well, I don't think you get anything from lip reading. I think what happens is if you get a certain blitz, like if they come with a max blitz and you're able to throw a screenplay or give a max protection where something gives you 100% advantage, or if maybe a certain run. But you can always audible a run off if you get a overshifted defense, things along those lines. But if you actually knew what was coming each play, I think every coach would tell you that would be a big advantage in the National Football League.
Tony Dungy said a couple of weeks ago on the show that they were concerned that the locker rooms were bugged in New England, that Peyton wouldn't talk about offensive game plan with Tom Moore. They'd go out in the corridor. Did you have any concerns when you were in New England?
I wasn't really in New England. I did it with a lot of different teams. We'd take a look in the locker rooms, and we'd have people, sweep the locker room, just make sure that there wasn't any type of devices or anything along those lines. It wasn't with New England, but it was with a number of teams in the National Football League, just to make sure they didn't get an advantage. Same thing on the sideline. You'd make sure you'd have maybe 2 or 3 guys. One guy would be live with signals. Another guy, you'd change it week by week. You would change signals up. Do everything that you could to prevent another team from getting an advantage.
What teams were you concerned about?
Oh, there's a lot of teams. There's 10, 15 teams in the league that that you were concerned about. You hear rumors here and there, but at the same time, it's easy to negate that. All you have to do is have a plan. If you think somebody's doing that, then you make an adjustment, and it's not a big adjustment.
But you'd have a professional come in and sweep the locker room?
Well, we've had that done on occasion.
What's that entail? I mean, how do you go find somebody who's going to come in and sweep the locker room for listening devices?
Well, I think anytime you spend a little time in D.C., it's pretty easy to figure that
out. He's Mike Shanahan, the former Broncos Redskins coach, joining us, Dan Patrick Show. Where does RG3 go from here?
I think that's a good question. I think the first thing Robert has to decide is, does he want to go back and run some of the things he did in 2012 that made him, Pro Bowl player and Rookie of the Year? Robert does have a lot of talents. You could see those talents in 2012, and over the last couple of years they've changed schemes, and you can see being a drop-back quarterback is a natural for him right now. He does have a lot of skill, a lot of talent, very smart guy. He still has a big upside. So the question is, I think everybody's question, can he go to another team that has run some of the things that he did early in his career? We had a lot of success, and will he be successful? And I think only he can determine if he wants to do that. But, over the last couple of years, he didn't want to run that type of system, so I'm not even sure if he wants to do it.
But his relationship with Dan Snyder, how did that impede the progress of you trying to coach RG3 when you knew that he was friends with the owner?
Well, I wasn't really being friends with the owner. Heck, you want the owner to be friends with your quarterback. You want them to have a great relationship. And the places that I was at that had great ownership with, if you take a look at Denver Broncos with Pat Bowlen and John Elway, or Steve Young and Joe Montana with Eddie DeBartolo, great relationships. I just think that, once that the owner and the quarterback that they decide that the type of offense that we were very successful with in 2012, that you really don't want to run a lot of those plays. You want to run more. You want to throw more. You want to run less, and you get other people involved. It takes away from the coach. And I think Jay Gruden's in a situation where he's going to run his attack, and he's going to get a quarterback that gives him the best chance to be successful running his attack, and it's based on practices, what he sees these guys do every day in practice, and he's going to pick the person that gives him the best chance to win. And that's what you're looking for in a head coach, picking out the best players and letting guys compete. And at the end of the day, players know. Player knows who the best players are, and as a head coach, you better play the best players, or you'll lose your football team very quickly.
What would you have done differently during your stay with the Redskins with RG3?
I don't think I would have done anything differently. I think once you get out of the profession, you sit back and you watch out some of the things that went on with social media. As a head football coach, you're kind of naive. You kind of live in your own world. You get in there early, you leave late. You really don't know what goes on. But when I sat down with Dan, really throughout my first year, Dan was very hesitant with Robert being the type of quarterback he was, because he was taking a lot of shots. Mm-hmm. And when you run that type of offense, you have to know when to slide. You have to know when to throw the football away, very similar to what Russell Wilson did last year. He did a great job running the football, but Russell Wilson never got hit. He learned when to slide, how to slide, when to throw it away, and you don't have to run the read option very often to have that as a threat. But what you have to be able to do is keep the defense off balance, because if it utilizes your skill set, and you can keep a defense off balance, and all of a sudden you run it 10 times in a game, very similar to what Seattle did on occasion, you can really get a defense off balance, and it's a difference in winning or losing a game. But once you change schemes and you want to go to a scheme that really you haven't done throughout your career, it does take some time. And I don't think Dan or Robert realized the transition that it was going to take for him to make that step.
Got a sleeper pick this year?
Oh, I think Washington will be much better than people think they will. I think Washington will play good.
What about playoff teams? Is there a sleeper team you look at and you say, because we always have it every year, there's 2 or 3 teams that jump up, and then 2 or 3 teams that regress?
Well, I think anytime you take a look at, and it's not a sleeper team, but I think that they'll play their best football, because I think Denver has made a commitment to run the ball a little bit more, which I think gives them a chance to play much better in the playoffs. And defensively, their defense is very good. They can rush the quarterback. They've got some great team speed. They can stop the run. They can make a offense one-dimensional. And I think what they can do is make their defense even tougher by the way they run in practice. And once they get to the playoffs, they will, have to put as much pressure on the quarterback. And I think that gives them a chance to do something once they get there.
I know you're coaching in New Zealand with Mike Holmgren. Have you been to New Zealand?
Dan, I haven't. I've been to Australia. I went there about 20 years ago, and we had such a great time there. We were there for about a week, and we had a chance to, play a game, and everybody was big into rugby at that time. But you could tell people really enjoyed football, American football, and I really enjoyed the people, so I'm looking forward to going there.
It'll be southernbowl.com, the Twitter handle at Southern Bowl. It'll be Mike Shanahan and Mike Holmgren coaching against one another next March in New Zealand. Good to catch up with you again, Coach. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan. Good talking to you.
Mike Shanahan, Broncos Redskins coach. Hiring lip readers. Sweeping locker rooms.